Hello, everyone. I thought for this week's class we would talk about Malbec because Malbec is so popular because we sell so much of it by the glass. Um, there's Malbec all over the world. I mean, there's Malbec in California, there's Malbec in Washington State, there's some in Australia. But excuse me, I'm going to be coughing. I'm fighting off this thing. Um, but for our purposes, the three most important places for Malbec are two in France and one in Argentina. So Malbec originated in a place in the southwest of France called Cahors, Cahors, and Malbec is the only grape planted in Cahors. It's called Cot in Cahors, Cot. In Cahors, Malbec produces very, very dark, very powerful, very masculine, very intense, very tannic red wines that are kind of monolithic. They're not the most um, complex wines in the world, but they are what they are. They are dark, dark, intense, masculine, tannic when they're young, powerful, full-bodied, dry red wines. So that's Cahors. Cahors is a province in the southwest part of France. Then, more importantly, Malbec is also was at one time one of actually the most widely planted grape in Bordeaux. There's very little Malbec in Bordeaux now because it just doesn't really add to the wines what Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot do. But there's some of the wineries still use Malbec, and some of the lower level wineries use chateaus use Malbec. But it was blended when it was more prominent in Bordeaux. It was blended with Cabernet Sauvignon, the five grapes: Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Malbec were the five Bordeaux grapes. Um, and Malbec in that pantheon of grapes added dark, intense, as tannic qualities to the wines. Um, there's not, as I said, there's not very much Malbec in Bordeaux anymore. I mean, it's there. It's just not used in as much in the best wines. Um, so that's only on the left bank. There's no Malbec on the right bank. So only on the left bank in Saint Estèphe, Pauillac, Saint Julien, Margaux, and Grave. And then in the Entre-deux-Mers, the area between the two rivers, there's more Malbec for the kind of low-level wines, for the $10, $15 Bordeaux. So that's Malbec in Bordeaux, um, which is pretty much there isn't much of it now. But of course, Malbec. When you think of Malbec, what you think of is Mendoza, Argentina. And Mendoza is in the foothills of the Alps, so it's very high elevation, very bright sunshine, very cool climate, almost no water because what little water there is comes from down these channels that uh, the Incas built. Um, that as the ice melts in the spring in the mountains, it comes down these channels down into where the grapes are planted. So you can kind of control the water, which is a good thing. It's also a high desert, so there's been very little disease, so the vines tend to live for a long time. Um, and of course, we serve the Nicolas Catena, the Catena Vista Flores Malbec by the glass. And Nicolas Catena, I guess it's 40 years ago, pioneered the idea of high quality Malbec in Argentina by planting grapes up in Mendoza. And most of the world thought he was crazy because it was too cold up there and the grapes would never get ripe. You'd never be able to make good wine from grapes grown in Mendoza because it's so cold. Of course, he saw the future coming. I don't, what he mainly saw at that time was that the cool climate would result in better balanced wines, wines that were more balanced between the fruit, tannin, acidity, etc. Uh, as a result of the cool climate, rather than just be pretty monolithic wines like grow further south or not further south, but lower elevations. in Argentina. At that time, most Malbec was pretty innocuous, pretty insipid. But he had this idea that if you planted grapes in Mendoza, in the high altitude, in the foothills of the Alps, they would create better balance in the wines, and that you could make wines that were the equal of any of the world. That in that way, he's a little bit like Angelo Gaia in Piedmont and Robert Mondavi in Napa, that he saw the future and he decided that he was going to create wines that were equal of any in the world, as Angelo Gaia did in Piedmont and Robert Mondavi did in Napa. And he's been very successful at that, and he and now his three children um, is Catena Zapata is easily the most important winery in South America and one of the most important wineries in the world. They produce an enormous amount of wine. They produce an enormous amount of very high quality wine, and they really are the standard bearers for high quality Malbec. The Vista Flores that we sell for $11 a glass is a really terrific example of Malbec, but they also have Malbecs that sell for $300 that are again the equal of any in the world. Um, the Vista Flores that we sell is kind of medium bodied and lush and easy. It's intended to be an easy drinking wine, a crowd pleaser wine, not like sweet like Quilt and Bowen, but a very pleasant, enjoyable, not particularly contemplative red wine that's just a nice glass of red wine. And at $11 is very affordable. So that's Malbec. Malbec's really that. There's just really just three places that it grows that are of much consequence, and you know, enormously the Catenas and other winemakers in Argentina produce extraordinary wines from the Malbec grape. Or the wines are some of the wines are very very good wines. As I said, not the most complex wines in the world, but they can be very good examples of what they are. And then a little bit in Bordeaux, but not so much anymore. Malbec's pretty much been kind of phased out over the last 40 or 50 years because it doesn't really at this point add what it once added. That's all I got on Malbec. It's a pretty short one today. I bet you appreciate it. I hope you watch it and you'll be a little bit more knowledgeable about wine as a result, and therefore be better at selling wine as a result. The more you know, the more comfortable you are talking about it, and the more you will sell, and therefore the more money you'll make. I promise you. Call my bluff. See you tomorrow.